This is my Pokemon card collection that I started over 20 years ago when I was just 11 years old. While the other boys at school were playing sports and chasing girls, I was opening booster packs and training to become a Pokemon master because my dad never beat me. But today is a very big day for me because for the very first time, I'm going to send a small part of my collection to be professionally graded. That means they'll be going to a grading company like PSA, where each card will be carefully examined and given a grade on a scale of 1 to 10 based on their physical condition, which will heavily determine their monetary value. Okay, enough of the scripted voice because this is real. I'm very scared. There's an inherent risk by sending my cards in. They could get lost or stolen in the mail. Somebody at PSA could tamper with them. So I'm using this video as a sort of an insurance policy in the event they get lost or they get sent back to me in a condition that wasn't the same as when I sent them in. Then there's documentation. I have video proof, video evidence that I can use in the court of law. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. The point is that I'm excited, but I'm equally terrified and a little embarrassed to be an adult with this problem. Like, I'm 36 years old and this is all I have to show for myself. These are my only children. This is the closest my mom will ever get to having grandkids. She's gonna have to tell her friends that one of her grandson's names is Kangaskhan. Sad. Sad. Before we continue, this video is brought to you in part by cdkeyoffer.com. So I have 3 desktop PCs that I regularly bounce between, and all of them are running activated copies of Windows from keys that I got on cdkeyoffer.com. I've used many key sites in the past, but CD Key Offer is the only one I've never had an issue with. I've never had a bad key, I've never had to call customer service, I've never had to email customer support, and I've never had to activate Windows over a phone, which is super fun. Right now you can get a Windows 10 Pro OEM key for around $22, but wait! Add it to your cart, use the 25% discount code BW20 at checkout, and the price drops to just $16.93. Buy Grabthar's hammer, what a savings. To use your new key, just go to your purchased orders from the drop-down menu to view and copy the key once you get there, and then paste that key into the Windows activation page. Voila! You've got an activated OS that's also eligible for a free upgrade to Windows 11. Alternatively, you can skip the upgrade and buy Windows 11 Pro directly using the same code BW20 to snag the OS for around $23. Activate the key using the aforementioned steps and get the full Windows experience easily and affordably. Thanks again to cdkeyoffer.com. Now back to the main video. So like I said, I started collecting Pokemon cards when I was a young lad. It was right after the games had come out for Game Boy, red, blue, and yellow version. Those Pokemon games were the first to come to the US, and I was obsessed. So once the cards came out, obviously, I was obsessed with that too. And I collected them for a couple years. I think it was just a couple of years and then it stopped completely. I can't remember exactly why, but I think it's because I got pantsed in middle school. You know, it's like when that happens, you have to, I was like, I have to rebrand. And so I came to school the next day, like, all I do is play Tony Hawk, bro. Pikachu's gay. And then fast forward to 2020, that's when I got back into it. And I hate to say it, but it was because that's when Logan Paul bought that first edition Shadowless Charizard for like 150 grand, which if you don't know, that's like the holy grail of Pokemon cards, that Charizard. And it got me thinking, like, where's my old collection? My cards are probably worth something these days. And so I made a vlog on this. I searched my parents' storage unit and actually found my old collection. I found every single card except for the Charizard. And it wasn't a first edition Shadowless like, the one he bought, but it was still, potentially worth thousands upon thousands of dollars depending on the condition. But the reason why that was the only card missing is because I kept it separate from the pack in a acrylic case. It was so highly sought after even back then that I was like, this one's special. And ironically, that's the reason why I couldn't find it and why it got lost from the others. And I've since searched high and low in my parents' house and in their attic and stuff. Till this day, it has yet to be found. So it would be nice. It's kind of like one of my goals, I guess, as a Pokemon card collector, is to eventually get that Charizard. Whether it's that specific one, that'd be awesome, or just another one that I buy aftermarket would be pretty sweet. Now I'm going to give you a close-up look at all these cards in just a moment, but while I'm doing it, I'm going to be taking mental notes as to which ones are good candidates for grading. And I'm going to be very selective with that because grading is not cheap. I don't know what the prices are with other grading companies like Beckett and CGC, but for PSA, it's about $25 a card. And that's if I'm okay with the potentially 3-month turnaround, 2 to 3 month turnaround before I get my card sent back to me. I could expedite that for a much higher cost, but I'm sticking to, I'm just gonna wait it out, and it's gonna be about $25 a card. So I've limited myself to choosing just 10 cards from this entire collection that I'll be sending into PSA. And the way I'm going to determine which cards to send is a couple different ways. One is the rarity or the potential value of the card. So a card that's, $1,000, is probably going to have a higher chance of getting sent in than one that's 25 cents. But then the other factor that I'm looking at is condition. So if I have a cool card, I'm like, yeah, this would be cool to get graded, but it's beat up and it's probably gonna get a low grade, then it's not as worthwhile, in my eyes, to spend $25 on grading a card that's gonna return a low grade. And it's interesting because if you don't know anything about Pokemon cards or how grading works, then you don't realize, understandably, how much impact the physical condition of a card has on its value. For example, let's take this Poliwhirl here, I guess. Excuse me, Ditto. Whoop, don't mean to touch you there. Ain't no party like a Ditto party. So this is potentially, has some grade potential because it's a first edition Shadowless, which, you know, I'm not gonna get too deep into that, but it's a really early print. One of the very first prints in the US to ever be released. And so you might go, oh, that could be valuable. And if it got a PSA 10, it probably would be. It probably would be worth something considerable. But then you take a closer look at it, there's a little bit of surface damage, maybe just a little bit on the edges, but then on the back side is really revealing because you can see that there's some white. Some of that blue paint has been chipped away slightly on the edges, and just that little bit, even though it's not terrible, that is gonna drop down the grade potentially significantly and therefore affecting its value significantly. So if I were to suspect that this is gonna get a PSA 5 out of 10, then it's probably not worth it for me personally, to get it graded, to pay the $25 to have someone examine it up close with a magnifying glass and all that crap and go, this ain't worth shit. That's, in a nutshell, a very high level explanation of sort of how that works. And the last reason is, well, it's less of a reason and more like bonus qualifiers, but if the card has really nice artwork that I absolutely love, it gets a point of consideration for that. And also, if it has some element of sentimental value for whatever reason, which a few of them do, then that's also a point. Let's go ahead and take a look at these cards. I'll give you a closer look, and also I'm curious, those of you who are familiar with this world, which of these cards you would have personally chosen to be graded, because I'm sure they're gonna be a little different than mine. But let's go ahead and check them out. Starting with some of my old school vintage cards, the ones that I've had for many, many years. There's something very special about a collection that's decades old. I don't know if it's just the nostalgia of simpler times and childhood, but I really love these cards, probably above everything else in my collection. So I've got the base collection here. This is the very first set to ever release in the US, and I've got every card in it, again, except for the Charizard. This is an imposter, he's a placeholder. This is actually from the Evolutions XY set that was released in 2016. Nowhere near as valuable as the original Charizard, but I had to take a photo for the thumbnail and it just would look really sad with an empty space there. So clickbait. And then we have the Jungle set here. Jungle set was the second set ever released. I've got some first editions here as well, like the Flareon, which is really cool. And then we have the Fossil set, which I think I like this one a little bit more than Jungle. Just when I was a kid, I was like, there was some edginess to it. You got more of the ghost Pokemon like Gengar and Haunter. Just some really cool artwork here in this particular set. A few first editions as well. That Kabutops, we see you. And I did say that I've never graded any cards for my personal collection, which is true, but I do own some graded cards that I purchased either on eBay, aftermarket, or some of them were gifts as well. And these are no surprise, some of my most valuable cards because they're all PSA 10s. They're already pretty rare slash, valuable cards to begin with, but the PSA 10 just puts that official stamp on it that this is a completely gem mint card. It's more or less in perfect condition. I really like this Moonbreon that has been popping off. I think I bought it for around $400 or $500, and it's now going for around $1,300. I think I saw it hit $1,500 at one point. It's just absolutely wild. And then we have that Lugia Classic. This is probably my most valuable card in my collection, actually. The Charizard GX, PSA 10. It's just a very highly sought after, and it was an extremely hard pull rate. There was a very low probability of pulling this card, and so this one's probably worth close to $3,000, which is about what I paid for it. I think it's actually gone down maybe $100 or so. That's the other thing too about this whole thing, guys, is that like some people grade their cards because they're investing in Pokemon cards, which I fully support, like get your bag and all that. That's not for me. I just like to collect them. I like looking at them.
For me, grading creates a sense of completion once a card has been slabbed. Slabbed referring to the plastic case that an authenticator places the card in and seals it once it's been graded. And that also helps protect and preserve the condition of the card as long as you keep it in there.
But not gonna lie, it's also a pretty cool flex to be like, well, look at this piece of cardboard. It's worth more than your house, you asshole. Anyway, back to the rest of the cards here. Oh yeah, that Giratina. You gotta give some screen time to that Giratina V, baby. Good God, it's a nice card. And then these are not really super special. These are just kind of like full arts. Just they're all hollows and stuff, but nothing too valuable here. This is very poorly organized, by the way. Some people are very good with organization. Instead of organizing them by sets, I organize them like, here, these are my waifus. These are gold cards. It has there's zero meaning whatsoever. These are also vintage. These are OG Japanese cards, but I only have a few holos. None of them are here. These are all the commons and uncommons, most of them in just whatever condition, but still kind of cool. These are all my Charizards. Not all of them are super valuable. Like this one's probably like $1 card at best, but I just like keeping all the Charizards together. Charizard's cool, he's the GOAT. But there are some heavy hitters in here, like that EX right there. I mean, even the VMAX, absolutely. There's some really cool cards in here. One, I think probably one of the coolest ones that I might actually have already decided I'm probably gonna get graded is this Japanese Charizard from the original base set that was released in Japan. So this is like a 21-year-old card. This is actually probably older than all the other vintage cards that I have because the card's released in Japan first. So I probably will get this graded. It's super cool. It's potentially worth a lot of money, but it also does have a crappy wrinkle in the middle of the foil. It's hard to see on camera, but it definitely has a crease. You can see it right there. It's a crease right above his neck, like right above his back, sort of. That's gonna dock it quite a bit, but I don't care. It's still such a cool card. And then these are high grade potential, I would say, just because they're either rare or I like the artwork a lot. These are all my shadowless cards. These are common and uncommon shadowless cards from the base set. There's some of the very first prints available, and there's some really cool ones in here. These are basically fossils. Actually, even more fossily are the very small collection of first edition shadowless cards that I have that are even, again, pre-release before those, common and uncommon, and you can see that I have 10 of them exactly, which explains why I also have this Nidoking first edition shadowless. It's the only first edition shadowless card that I have from the base set that's a holo, and obviously you can tell it came from that pack because those are the only other cards that I own that are also first edition shadowless. So they're all classmates. They're all cut from the same cloth, which is pretty cool. Oh, and you know what? Speaking of being cut from the same cloth, one thing that I completely forgot to mention when going over the physical condition of these cards is centering. Centering plays a role in the condition of a card, or rather, not the condition so much, but the grade. So what I mean by that is, god dang it, let me get a card where I can actually see the back of it. Going back to Poliwag, sorry. So the way that Pokemon cards are actually made is that they all get printed on these large sheets, and then those sheets get cut into the individual cards that you get as a retail customer. And a lot of the time those machines do not cut perfectly. So what you'll end up seeing is one border is thicker than the other. This one actually has pretty decent centering. It's kind of hard to see on camera. This is an example of a well-centered card. If everything else about the card was perfect, it could potentially get a 10 grade. But if the centering is really poor, like one border is very thin and the other is really fat, it could potentially dock the grade, which is a really interesting part about grading because it's the one area where you have no control over it. You have no control over how the machine cuts that card, but it does carry a lot of weight in how a card is graded. And that is my collection in a nutshell, which means I now have to make 10 very hard decisions as to which ones I'll be sending off to PSA for grading. And I'm realizing this is a fairly involved process because I have to look over every card, consider which ones I want to grade, which is probably going to be at least a quarter of them, and then from there, check and examine the condition myself of each one, if it's even worth sending in, and then look up the value, the current value of what they're going for on sites like TCG Player and what they're selling for on eBay. It's gonna take me hours to really distill my entire collection down to the 10 chosen ones. So give me a sec, I will be not really right back, but for you, I'll be right back. Okay, I've got them. They're all right here, the Big 10. Oh boy, this was not easy by any stretch, but here we are. I've got them in my hands, and we're gonna go through them one by one. I wanna show you guys the ones that I feel have the potential to get a PSA 10, the ones that I feel are in perfect enough condition to actually pull a 10. So obviously those are gonna be, for the most part, the more modern cards, and then we'll go from there. But this is the first one in the Big 10, the Leafeon VMAX from Evolving Skies. I absolutely love this card. This would be a great one to pair and sort of complement the Umbreon, the Moonbreon that I already have in a PSA 10 because it's from the same Evolving Skies set. I love that set. I went ham and bought a lot of cards from that set. I pulled this, and at the time I pulled it, I didn't realize that it was actually worth something. I think it's probably going for $300-400 now in a PSA 10. So if I can score that, that's cool. And then the centering is just bang on. It's totally perfect. I have no concern that it's gonna get docked for the centering. It's pretty spot on. And then the next one we have is also from Evolving Skies, the Rayquaza VMAX. So this was my ultimate #1 chase card. Chase card meaning this is the card that I really wanted to pull the most out of this entire set. So I went ham and bought like $1,500 worth of booster packs from Evolving Skies. And after opening every single one, I did not get the Rayquaza VMAX. He never showed up. The pull rates for this were pretty difficult. But out of the blue, my friend just gave this card to me. He knew that I was chasing it, and he was just like, oh, I've got one of those. You can have mine. And I was like, what? Oh my, geez, do you want me to, like, do you want to trade it? And he's like, no, it's fine.
So yeah, shout out to my friend for this amazing gift. But the artwork on it just, just as it is amazing. I love it. It shines really nice in the sun and when there's good lighting. And then the centering is also bang on, no issues here. Perfect condition, pretty much. So yeah, this is going to be a really nice card to grade. And then next up we have Magikarp. Magikarp from Paldea Evolved. This is a full art card. Is this a secret rare? No, it is. It is a secret rare. Now, when I pulled this card, I had no idea that it was worth anything. I just thought, oh, it looks like really cool artwork. But apparently, it's going for a good $400 or $500, I think, for PSA 10s. So, and this is definitely, like I said, candidate for PSA 10. Really good centering, maybe a little thick of a border on the bottom, but it's really not too bad. And I love the fact that it's it's such a highly sought after card and it's so valuable. Yet it's Magikarp, which is the most useless Pokemon in the game. Like he couldn't even attack enemies. His only move was Splash. Which did 0 damage. He just flailed around, and now he's an expert splasher, so he's really good at being useless. And then we have Lily. Lily from Sun and Moon. This is from the Sun and Moon base set. Again, I just love the artwork on all of these. This was also a sentimental card because I was at a local trade show with my girlfriend and she kind of ran off by herself and bought this card for me behind my back. I thought that was really nice. So yeah, I think this could get a 10. The centering looks pretty good. Actually, the centering on this one's very good, and no scuffs or anything. This is just possibly a gem mint card, and yeah, we'll see how that one turns out. And then another waifu, which is Misty's Favor. I got this at that same local trade show, and I just purchased it there. I thought it was a cool looking card. Misty's an OG, of course, and it's really shot up in value since the time I purchased it. I think I bought it for maybe, I can't remember if it was like $60 to $100. $60 to $100, but a PSA 10 is now going for, I think, $300, something like that. But yeah, lovely card. And then our last potential PSA 10, you might be surprised to see, is a Squirtle Shadowless from the base set. Now, I looked at every single one of my Shadowless and first edition Shadowless cards and inspected the condition of each, and this was the only one that I felt could possibly pull a 10. It is in immaculate condition, especially given the fact that it's well over 20 years old. The centering is good. There's just maybe the tiniest speck of white on one of these corners, in the top right corner, but I can't even really see it. It's pretty damn perfect. And if I can get a PSA 10 in this, man, that would be awesome. Squirtle means a lot to me. He was my starter Pokemon in the original Game Boy games. So yeah, so it makes a lot of sense that I would naturally also want to grade this Blastoise, also from the base set. Blastoise and I were bros. We crushed it. We crushed all the trainers together. I don't think this is gonna get a PSA 10. This has a few scuffs on it, a few little bits of white, just a tiny bit of white on the corners. The top right and left corners have a little bit of white. Really not too bad, and super minimal white on the bottom. You can see that tiny little speck right there. But overall, a very clean card. This could get a PSA 8. That may be a little too optimistic. It just depends. Maybe a 7. I think at least a 7, and an 8 if we're lucky. But either or would make me very happy. And then, of course, I alluded to this one earlier that I was possibly going to grade this one. My Japanese Charizard from the original base set. And again, this is a really nice kind of classic vintage card. It's the oldest Charizard card that I own in my collection, apart from the one that I lost. And you can see there, once again, there's that nasty wrinkle crease in the holographic part. And it does have a bit of a scratch just outside the frame right there. The backside is pretty tattered. You can see that it is definitely at least a moderately played card, which isn't terrible, but it's not great either. So I would suspect this could be a PSA 5, maybe? I don't know, it really just depends on who's grading it, I suppose. There's lots of stories of people sending in PSA cards, getting like an 8 one day, and then sending it back in and getting like a 6, and then vice versa. Sometimes they send it in twice, and they go from an 8 to a 10. It's just kind of all over the place. But we also have a 25th anniversary Charizard that is in Japanese. This is also kind of more of a sentimental card. I got this with my girlfriend in Taiwan, I think about a year ago. We bought 2 actually. I bought one for my collection. She just bought one for investing because I convinced her that it was a really good deal. And I think at the time I really did think it was a good deal, but I don't know how the value's fluctuated since then. Hopefully it does increase in value. I thought it'd be kind of nice to just get it, get it graded for her, kind of give it to her as sort of a gift. Be like, all right, kind of protecting your investment. And hopefully it does, increase in value for her sake and for my sake, because she'll be very mad at me if it doesn't. And then finally, the last card in our top 10, the Nido, baby. The Nido King, first edition, shadowless. This is arguably the coolest card in my entire collection because it's so old and it's first edition shadowless. It is the only first edition shadowless holographic card that I own, and because of that, I just have to case it. I have to grade it, even though I'm not expecting fantastic results. It is, again, I don't know if I mentioned that earlier, but it does have quite a bit of like surface damage. It looks like the equivalent of if a card was just sunbathing for 25 years and there was just a bit of skin damage and sun damage, and you just kind of, you can tell that it's, hasn't been really taken good care of. There's a scratch right by the HP. Look at that. Ooh, that's a nasty gash. And then you've got little micro scratches in the foil that you can see. It's really not in good shape, and the back doesn't look much better. You can see all of the tatteredness right there. All the white is not looking great. So this might get a PSA 3, but it's such a badass card. I'd be happy with a PSA 1. I just think it deserves to be in a PSA case, in some sort of graded case. It just makes me happy. It would just make me happy to see it. So there it is, the big 10 pieces of cardboard. But, when I really think about it, each card has a story. And I can remember for a lot of these exactly where I was and who I was with when I pulled that card. And it just brings back a lot of fun memories, or if they were gifts, from someone special, or just, a reminder of good times. There's a reason why these cards mean so much to me. And why I'm so terrified of sending them out. But it is now time for me to face those fears and say goodbye for now.